Imagine your world shrinking in an instant, the familiar turning monstrous. Today, we're diving into a truly unique set of documents detailing exactly that. The societal collapse and tribalization of a second-grade class after a great shrinkage event on the Leroy elementary playground.
It's quite extraordinary when you can begin to consider the premise. We have what seem to be firsthand accounts detailing the immediate fallout and the longer-term stuff from something just completely unprecedented.
Absolutely. We've got excerpts here from top secret project grounded.txt, an addendum file, and this final dispatch LERTO archives. These aren't just notes. They feel like frontline reports from someone covering the sub-blade of grass beat after this incredible event back on May 13th, 2025. You have to admire that dedication, right? Chronicling something so bizarre.
Precisely. I mean, to embed oneself, figuratively speaking, within a reality so fundamentally altered, it speaks to a remarkable commitment to understanding this micro-society and level of detail. It gives you this unsettling but really compelling look at their struggles.
So, our goal today is to unpack this whole extraordinary situation. Understand the challenges these miniaturized kids faced, the societies they built, the threats they ran into, and the bizarre twists, like the partial return to normal and then an even stranger second shrinking event. We'll explore what these documents really tell us about resilience, adaptation, and maybe the unpredictable nature of reality itself.
Okay, where do we start? The playground itself.
Yeah, let's unpack this transformed playground. I mean, a normal second grade recess turning into a fight for survival on this vastly scaled landscape.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable.
Well, the immediate change in scale would have been profoundly disorienting. Familiar, safe areas suddenly become immense and potentially deadly. Think about the soccer field.
Yeah.
Suddenly it's the great grassy plains, this endless jungle.
Yeah.
The psychological impact of that sudden vulnerability, it must have been immense, like being cast adrift in some alien world.
Right. And the everyday landmarks taking on these epic proportions and new dangers, too. Mount Merry-Go-Round, not fun anymore, but a strategic high point and now infested with spinner spiders.
Exactly.
It really makes you reconsider how we perceive threats based on our size, doesn't it?
And the immediate scarcity of resources, that would have driven so much of their behavior, like the caverns of the lost lunchbox, becoming this fiercely contested shelter. It highlights that fundamental need for protection. Even something as harmless as a puddle, right? The puddle of despair. It transforms into a significant, dangerous body of water with its own really formidable inhabitants, like the water strider flotillas and these mosquito larval leviathans.
Mosquito larva leviathan. The way this is described, it really evokes a sense of mythic danger in this tiny world.
Yeah.
And the unpredictable sprinkler geyser fields becoming monsoons.
Yeah.
That speaks to how even minor environmental changes could become totally life-threatening.
It just underscores the overwhelming power of the environment when your scale is so drastically reduced. Forces we barely notice become these existential threats. The wood-chip wilderness, now in the barren desert. The asphalt delta, a sun-baked wasteland. Each familiar zone now a zone of extreme hardship.
It really emphasizes how our sense of safety is so intrinsically linked to our physical scale within our environment.
Okay, so with this monstrous playground established, we then see the rapid emergence of these micro-societies. Almost immediately, these kids are forming tribes. What fundamental human instinct do you think drains that rapid cohesion in the face of such chaos?
Well, when you're confronted with overwhelming threat and uncertainty, seeking safety and strength in numbers is a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. It has to be. Even at that young age, there's an understanding of shared defense, resource pooling, especially when the familiar adult structures of authority have just vanished. It's a fascinating, albeit extreme example of societal formation under duress. It is. And the names and characteristics of these tribes, they're just incredible. The Sandbox Sovereignty, led by Lily Digger Tran in the Great Dune Sea, with their pebble walls and antlion traps, and their motto, "In sand we trust, all others are dust." What can that motto tell us about their worldview in this new reality?
Oh, it speaks volumes about their adaptation, their resourcefulness.
Yeah.
They've identified their primary resource, sand, and turned their environment, complete with its, natural predators like antlions, into a defensible stronghold. The motto suggests a fierce territoriality and a belief in their self-reliance within their sandy domain. It kind of mirrors how early human societies often derive their identity and security from their immediate surroundings.
Then you have the swing set scavengers, led by Mikey Highflyer Rodriguez. They're described as nomadic, using the Twin Peaks of Peril, the swing set for observation and raids on the picnic table plateau. There's a real sense of daring in their approach, isn't there? Nomadic, opportunistic.
Definitely. Their mobility gives them access to a wider range of potentially valuable resources, but it also exposes them to greater dangers from the environment, from other tribes.
Right.
Their reliance on raiding suggests a high-risk, high-reward strategy. They're constantly balancing the need for resources with the threat of confrontation. It's a more fluid, perhaps less stable societal structure compared to the settled Sandbox Sovereignty.
And the asphalt nomads, led by Jamal Heatfoot Williams, these hardy survivors of the blacktop, they have knowledge of shadow trails and even a truce with ground beetles. That alliance with another species is a fascinating adaptation. What might have led to that, and what advantages would it offer?
Well, surviving on the harsh asphalt would have demanded a deep understanding of its nuances, like those cooler shadow trails. The truce with ground beetles. It likely represents a pragmatic recognition of mutual benefit. Maybe the beetles provided some form of early warning system, or even helped with scavenging. While the nomads might have offered protection or access to certain resources the beetles couldn't get, it demonstrates a pretty sophisticated understanding of interspecies relationships for survival.
We can't forget the lost boys and girls of the Balbin, led by Sam and Sarah, the Whispers Chen, hoarding lollipop remnants in a deflated kickball so insular and mysterious. What could be the advantage of being so isolated in this context?
Their isolation could be a defense mechanism, really, against both environmental threats and other potentially hostile groups. And hoarding a concentrated energy source like sugar provides a form of security, maybe potential future leverage, even if their lack of direct interaction limits their access to other resources and information. It's a high-stakes strategy, prioritizing self-sufficiency and secrecy above all else.
And finally, the kindergardians, led by Pip, these resilient first graders under a plantain weed, suspicious of everyone. It highlights that even within this small group, age and prior social dynamics still play a role, don't they? How these societies form.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even in the face of a complete upheaval of their world, familiar social structures can provide a sense of order, predictability. The first graders, perhaps feeling vulnerable in the new environment, would naturally look to a leader from their own group for security. And they'd likely be wary of the older, maybe more powerful second graders.
Makes sense.
It reflects that enduring human tendency to form bonds with those who share similar experiences and social standing.
It's a testament to the strength of these kids, but also the fragility of their existence, with alliances constantly shifting. Now, these early days, this micro-epoch, that sound brutal. Beyond just forming tribes, what were some of the immediate life or death challenges they faced?
Oh, the initial chaos must have been utterly terrifying. The reports mention the first casualties, Alex and Emily. It serves as a stark reminder of the immediate, unforgiving dangers. Alex being carried off by an ant, Emily lost in a gutter.
These are everyday playground features turned lethal hazards.
Yeah.
It just underscores how quickly the familiar became deadly. And the constant, pressing need for sustenance for food and water. A discarded cookie crumb becoming manna, a potato chip, a feast. It really forces you to appreciate the abundance we often take for granted. What does that extreme scarcity do to the social dynamics within these groups?
Well, extreme scarcity amplifies the importance of even the smallest resources. It can lead to potential conflict, sure, but also fosters innovation and cooperation in resource acquisition and management. The value of even a single crumb would have been immense, potentially leading to both altruistic sharing and fierce competition. It highlights how basic needs drive fundamental social behaviors.
And the sheer ingenuity on display, turning twigs into spears, bottle caps into shields, dental floss into rope, that lost marble, the orb of hydration, becoming this revered artifact. It's incredible what they managed with so little. What does this tell us about human adaptability?
It speaks volumes about our innate capacity for problem solving and adaptation when faced with existential threats. The ability to repurpose discarded objects into essential tools demonstrates a remarkable level of resourcefulness and a powerful drive to survive. And the orb of hydration. It illustrates that human tendency to imbue objects with significance, especially in times of crisis, serving both practical and maybe symbolic purposes.
Then came the first intertribal conflict, the War of the Gummy Worm. Sounds almost comical on the surface, right? But it clearly highlights that even over something seemingly small, these survival instincts and territorial drives were kicking in hard.
Definitely. Even a seemingly minor conflict like the War of the Gummy Worm can illustrate fundamental principles: territoriality, resource competition, the potential for escalation.
Mm-hmm.
What begins as a dispute over a single item can quickly escalate into broader conflict as tribal identities and perceived threats come into play. It's a microcosm of how larger conflicts often originate from seemingly small disagreements.
And those larger confrontations were multifaceted, weren't they? This multi-front war against both insectoid threats and each other. Let's talk about the ant legions first. The Crimson Phalanx and the Obsidian Guard, these are described as major military powers. What makes ants such a formidable threat in this miniaturized world?
Ants, with their inherent social structure, their sheer numbers, and their collective behavior, would represent a highly organized and persistent threat. Their ability to coordinate attacks, their relentless foraging instincts, they'd be a constant danger to the much smaller and less organized children. The Battle of Crumb Hill likely demonstrated the devastating consequences of underestimating their capabilities.
And the arachnid assassin spiders becoming these apex predators with deadly webs, the loss of those swing-set scavenger scouts to a silk-spinning stalker,
Yeah.
that really drives home the terror of encountering such a creature at that scale.
Yeah, unlike the organized, swarming attacks of the ants, spiders represent a more solitary ambush-style threat. Their webs become virtually invisible and inescapable traps at that scale, and their venom poses a direct, immediate danger. They are the silent hunters of this micro-world, preying on the unwary.
We also hear about less common threats like termite titans near the Great Splintered Wall and wasp corsairs near discarded fruit. It seems danger could lurk in basically any corner of this transformed playground.
The emergence of these various insect threats highlights the rapid and dramatic reshaping of the playground ecosystem because of the size change. Creatures that were once relatively insignificant now occupy new niches and pose significant dangers, forcing the children to adapt to a really complex and unpredictable environment.
Then you have the intertribal warfare, the dewdrop raids, the siege of the lost lunchbox, even these G-rated atrocities like leading ant trails into enemy camps. It's a brutal, tiny world.
No.
What does this level of conflict, even amongst children, reveal about the pressures of survival?
Under extreme pressure and with limited resources, even the social norms and inhibitions of childhood can be overridden by that fundamental drive for survival. These conflicts, while, G-rated in our terms, they represent a desperate struggle for resources and territory. It highlights how scarcity can lead to intergroup conflict, regardless of age.
Despite all this, we see incredible adaptation and resourcefulness. Talk about some of the ways they manage to survive, even thrive sometimes in this hostile environment.
Well, their ability to construct shelter, from simple leaf lean-tos offering minimal protection to more elaborate dwellings within discarded cans or under playground structures, that demonstrates a key survival instinct. They were constantly seeking ways to create defensible spaces and protection from the elements and predators.
And the development of weaponry, pebble projectiles, prize thumbtack spears, bottle cap phalanxes, even gumball grenades. It's like a miniature arms race unfolding on the playground.
Right. It reveals a growing understanding of the threats they faced and a proactive approach to dealing with them. They were learning to harness the materials available to them to create tools that offered a strategic advantage, demonstrating a capacity for innovation under pressure. The development of increasingly sophisticated weaponry suggests an escalating awareness of the dangers and a drive to gain the upper hand.
And the intense resource management, rationing, hoarding, internal power struggles over single crumbs. It highlights the fundamental importance of even the smallest units of sustenance in their world. How might these internal dynamics have shaped the social structures of the tribes?
Oh, the control and distribution of scarce resources would have been central to the power dynamics within each tribe. Those who controlled the food and water would have held significant influence, potentially leading to internal hierarchies, alliances, even betrayals. The need for rationing and the temptation of hoarding would have created internal tensions and really shaped the social fabric of these micro-societies.
Beyond the immediate threats, there were also the legends and environmental dangers. The solitaries and whispers of the lost add this layer of tragedy and the unknown to their world. What role do these kinds of stories and legends often play in societies facing hardship?
In societies facing extreme hardship and loss, stories and legends often serve multiple purposes. They can act as cautionary tales, warning of dangers, they can provide explanations for the unknown, and they can serve as a way to remember and honor those who have been lost, helping to maintain a sense of shared history and identity in the face of trauma.
And the way they interpreted the actions of the tall ones, Sky Thunder for the bell, Earthquake for a dropped book, the Bristle Beast for the janitor, the Great Green Devourer's Feast for lawn mowing, it's a fascinating, almost mythological understanding of the world around them.
It really is. It highlights our fundamental human need to find patterns and explanations, even when we lack complete information. By sort of anthropomorphizing the tall ones and their actions, the children created a framework for understanding the seemingly random and powerful events of their macro world. It provided a sense of order and predictability in a chaotic situation.
Then you have the environmental catastrophes. The daily sprinkler monsoon, the solar scorch, the shadow of oblivion, the gumtrap archipelago. The playground itself became this relentless and hostile force. How did they likely adapt to these predictable and unpredictable environmental challenges?
Adapting to those environmental threats would have required observation, learning, and developing survival strategies. For predictable events like the sprinkler monsoon, they might have developed early warning systems or figured out reliable shelter locations.
Right.
For more unpredictable dangers like the solar scorch or the gumtrap archipelago, they would have needed to learn to navigate and avoid these hazards through experience and, shared knowledge cast down within the tribes.
Okay, so as things progressed into what the report calls cycle 6 and 7, and maybe we can infer these are weeks or months into their miniaturization, we see these escalating conflicts and more daring actions. The Great Sugar Crystal Expedition by the swing set scavengers sounds incredibly risky. What might have motivated such a dangerous undertaking?
Desperation, probably. Desperation for high-value resources like sugar, coupled with Rodriguez's ambition and the need to maintain the scavengers' nomadic lifestyle, that likely fueled this expedition. The potential reward of a significant energy source would have outweighed the considerable risks involved in traversing dangerous territory like the Pebble Plains of Peril and facing the 10th Crimson Phalanx.
And even though they lost the main prize, they returned with fragments and intelligence, and Rodriguez declares it a qualified strategic success. It shows a level of strategic thinking that's quite remarkable under the circumstances.
It demonstrates a remarkable capacity for learning and strategic adaptation. Even in failure, they were able to extract valuable information and refine their understanding of the environment and its dangers. This ability to view setbacks as learning opportunities is a key aspect of resilience, especially in the face of prolonged adversity.
The battle for Bottle Cap Ridge between the Sandbox Sovereignty and the Asphalt Nomads. It sounds like a full-scale, albeit tiny, war, all over bottle caps. What might have made bottle caps such a contested resource?
Well, bottle caps, they're durable, potentially versatile. They could have served multiple purposes, as tools, maybe shovels, as defensive armor or shields.
Ah, okay.
Or even as a form of currency or social status within their microsocieties. Their scarcity in relation to their perceived value would have made them a highly contested resource, leading to territorial disputes and, armed conflict.
And the Kinderguardians' defense of their dewdrop citadel against thirsty ants using snail slime and an experimental acorn catapult. Hip sounds like a really resourceful and determined leader.
Absolutely. It highlights the fact that ingenuity and leadership can emerge from unexpected places, even in the youngest members of a group facing a crisis. Pip's ability to organize a defense using readily available resources like snail slime, and even to conceptualize and attempt to build a catapult. It demonstrates a remarkable level of resourcefulness and strategic thinking, regardless of age.
Then you have the Lost Boys' clandestine foray into the Underbleacher Labyrinth with their unknown objective cloaked in cobwebs. They just add to the mystery of this whole situation. Their actions seem consistently different, enigmatic. What purpose might this serve for their survival?
Their secretive nature and pursuit of unknown objectives could be a deliberate survival strategy. By remaining enigmatic and occasionally acquiring seemingly valuable but unexplained items like that clean button, they found they might have cultivated a sense of mystique or even fear among the other tribes, potentially deterring aggression or attempts to exploit them. Their information gathering, whatever its purpose, seems key to their survival.
The report ends this section with a situational analysis of volatile environment, shifting alliances, critical resource scarcity, constant insectoid threat, but also remarkable and desperate resilience. It paints a pretty bleak picture for the long term, doesn't it? Without some kind of external intervention.
Yeah, despite their incredible adaptability and resilience, the constant pressures from the environment, predators, and intertribal conflict would have made long-term survival extremely precarious. Without a significant shift in their circumstances, the attrition rate would likely have continued to climb. It just wasn't sustainable.
Which brings us to the turning point, this discovery and subsequent disaster in cycles 8 and 9. The Lost Boys finding the diminution engine, this whispering cube in the Underbleacher Labyrinth. It's like something straight out of science fiction.
It really is. Within the realm of speculative physics, you can imagine a device that manipulates fundamental forces or alters the dimensional relationships of matter at a localized level. Perhaps it interacts with the Higgs field, which gives particles mass. Or maybe it creates a temporary distortion in the fabric of space-time, effectively changing the scale of affected objects relative to the rest of the universe. Of course, this is purely conjecture within the context of this extraordinary event.
This leads to the formation of the Coalition of the Small at the neutral Dandelion Plateau. It's remarkable that they were able to put aside their differences, even temporarily, for a common goal. What kind of unifying force would be strong enough to overcome those tribal divisions?
The discovery of a potential way to reverse their miniaturization, the diminution engine that would have provided a powerful unifying force. The shared desire to return to their normal size and escape their perilous micro-world would likely have outweighed their previous tribal conflicts, at least temporarily, leading to this unprecedented coalition. Hope is a powerful motivator.
The journey to the Underbleacher Labyrinth must have been fraught with anticipation and danger. And then calamity strikes right at the contraption itself. Susie Perkins's micro-plunge into the subatomic realm after touching a blue button, just a truly horrifying accident. What new challenges and threats might even exist at that subatomic scale?
Oh, at the subatomic level, the fundamental forces of nature dominate completely. Gravity becomes negligible, while electromagnetic and strong and weak nuclear forces become paramount. The very nature of matter and energy is different. Threats could include interactions with fundamental particles, molecular forces becoming insurmountable barriers, even the possibility of being absorbed by larger molecular structures. The environment would be governed by quantum mechanics, a realm just so far removed from our everyday experience.
And then Kevin K-Man Miller becoming a giant Kevin the Colossus just by falling against an unmarked panel. What a bizarre and unexpected twist. This raises so many questions about the engine's functionality. Was it faulty or just incomprehensible?
Indeed. It suggests the diminution engine was far more complex and its controls far less intuitive than they could have possibly imagined. Kevin's accidental return to colossal size highlights the unpredictable and potentially dangerous nature of the technology involved. It introduces this new dynamic where one of their own has become an incomprehensible giant, potentially both a savior and an unintended threat.
This takes us into the truly mind-bending realm of the microverse. For the subatomarians, the scale shifts again to an almost unimaginable degree. Grass as mountains, dust mites as behemoths. It's almost impossible for us to truly visualize this.
Our intuitive understanding of scale just breaks down entirely at that level. What were already minute creatures are now colossal, and the very landscape is defined by microscopic structures. The physical laws as they experience them would be radically different from our macroscopic reality.
The report mentions phage dragoons, amoeboid titans, ciliate storm fleets, the tardigrade nomads, bacterial blights. It sounds like a whole new, terrifying, and utterly alien ecosystem. These are real microscopic entities, right? But what makes them such significant threats at this scale?
Yeah, they are real. But at this scale, even single-celled organisms can become formidable predators or environmental hazards. Phages are viruses that infect bacteria, so phage dragoons suggests a viral threat on a massive scale relative to the subatomarians. Amoeboid organisms can engulf and digest smaller particles. Ciliates are modal microorganisms that could potentially swarm or create dangerous currents. Tardigrades, while known for their resilience, could still be enormous and potentially dangerous at that scale, and bacterial blights could represent widespread microbial contamination. It's a hostile universe.
Their new survival imperatives, navigating surface tension, avoiding being consumed, sustenance from organic molecules, it's a completely different set of challenges. And the near impossibility of communication with the macro world must have been incredibly isolating.
Existing at that scale would demand entirely new forms of locomotion and sensory perception. Surface tension, normally a subtle force for us, could become a dominant feature of their landscape, like thick syrup or a wall. Obtaining sustenance would involve interacting with molecules, maybe even harnessing energy at a fundamental level. And the inability to communicate with those who remained at the larger scale would have created a profound sense of isolation and abandonment.
Then, amidst all this unimaginable struggle, we have Operation Rebiggening, triggered accidentally by Kevin the Colossus. A partial return to normal size for many, but crucially, not all. A bittersweet and incomplete rescue.
Very bittersweet. While a return to normal size would have been a tremendous relief for those affected, the knowledge that some remained behind, particularly those in the subatomic realm, that would have created a lasting sense of loss and perhaps even guilt. The partial nature of the event also highlights the unpredictable and maybe uncontrollable nature of the diminution engine.
And the permanent loss of some prior to this moment, a tragic reminder of the ultimate stakes they were playing for. And the subatomarians remaining miniaturized, their fate completely unknown for a decade.
The casualties suffered before the restoration just underscore the deadly realities of their experience. And the continued miniaturization of the subatomarians represents a profound and seemingly irreversible consequence of the events left behind in that microverse.
So fast forward 10 years to 2035, and we get this final dispatch. The lingering psychological impact on the returned children must have been profound. How do you think such an extraordinary and traumatic experience might have shaped their lives in the long term?
Oh, experiencing such a radical shift in reality, facing constant danger, witnessing the loss of their peers, it would undoubtedly leave deep and lasting psychological scars. They might struggle with anxiety, PTSD, fear, a fundamental change in their perception of the world and their place in it. Reintegrating into normal society after an ordeal like that would have been an immense challenge.
The ongoing tragedy of the lost subatomarians, presumed gone for a decade. And then, the astonishing rediscovery after all that time, using highly sensitive experimental quantum entanglement detectors at a research facility near the preserved LERTO site. Okay, briefly, what is quantum entanglement and how might it theoretically be used to detect something at that scale?
Okay, so quantum entanglement is this bizarre phenomenon where two or more particles become linked, sharing the same fate no matter how far apart they are. Measuring a property of one instantly influences the properties of the other. In this fictional context, you could speculate that the diminution engine might have created an entangled state between the shrunken children and some microscopic particles. So detecting a change in the entangled partners of the subatomarians, even at their minuscule scale, might theoretically be possible using extremely sensitive detectors. Highly speculative, of course, relies on a fictional application of quantum physics.
Okay, got it. So the restoration of Susie Perkins, Timmy Sparkplug O'Connell, and Maria Sanchez after all that time, it's almost unbelievable. But the key detail, they appear in their early to mid-20s despite only 10 years passing in our world. The profound age discrepancy. What could possibly explain such accelerated aging?
This temporal anomaly is one of the most perplexing and, frankly, scientifically baffling aspects of their return. One possibility within the realm of sci-fi is that time simply flowed differently for them in the microverse. Maybe the intense physical processes at that scale, or some unknown property of the diminution engine itself, caused their biological processes to accelerate dramatically. Another possibility is some form of interaction with temporal fields or dimensions while they were miniaturized. But these are highly speculative explanations for an extraordinary phenomenon.
They're fragmented accounts of the microverse landscapes of unimaginable scale, Brownian motion as a significant hazard, those terrifying microfauna we mentioned. It's still so difficult to truly grasp the nature of their experience. Brownian motion, for instance, that's the random movement of particles in a fluid. Why would that be a hazard at the subatomic level?
Well, at the subatomic level, where the children themselves would be comparable in size to larger molecules, the random bombardment by other molecules, Brownian motion, would be a significant and unpredictable force. They could be violently buffeted around and making navigation and just maintaining their physical integrity extremely difficult. It's like trying to walk through a constant hurricane of invisible particles.
But the consistent and unsettling reticence about their restoration, that is not a story for the telling. What do you make of that profound silence? What kind of experience could be so impactful that they would refuse to speak of it?
Their silence. It could stem from a number of deeply profound reasons. Perhaps the process of restoration itself was traumatic or involved unforeseen consequences they are unable or unwilling to share. It's also possible they encountered something within the microverse, maybe even a form of intelligence, or some fundamental truth about reality that has fundamentally altered their understanding of the world and is just too difficult or maybe too dangerous to articulate. Their reticence adds this powerful layer of mystery to their already incredible story.
It certainly does. It leaves us with so many unanswered questions. The impact of their return on the original survivors, the renewed questions for science and philosophy, the ongoing mystery of this unknown organization mentioned in the files. It feels like the end of a chapter, but one with countless open threads.
Their return has definitely reopened a Pandora's box of questions about the nature of reality, the limits of our scientific understanding, and the potential for unforeseen consequences when we tamper with the fundamental building blocks of the universe. And the mention of an unknown organization hints at a potentially deliberate and far-reaching experiment with implications we can only begin to imagine.
So to sort of wrap up, we've witnessed a playground transformed into a perilous continent, the rise of intricate microsocieties, a desperate struggle against insectoid predators and each other, a calamitous attempt at reversing a shrinking event, a plunge into the bizarre realm of the subatomic, and finally, a decade later, chronally displaced return. The story of Leroy Elementary is a stark reminder of how quickly reality can shift and how profoundly even the smallest among us can adapt and endure. And the reappearance of the subatomarians after a decade, biologically older and eerily silent about their return, that adds a layer of profound mystery that just defies easy explanation.
What's truly fascinating is how this fantastical narrative, while seemingly far-fetched, allows us to explore fundamental aspects of survival, societal organization, and the human response to the utterly unknown. The accelerated aging and the silence of the returnees force us to confront the very nature of time and experience, pushing the boundaries of our comprehension.
This incredible, albeit fictional, account really makes you contemplate our understanding of scale, time, and the very limits of human experience. If a decade in a subatomic realm can result in such profound temporal displacement, what other realities might exist just beyond the edge of our perception? And what truly defines survival when the very laws of physics seem to bend? The silence of the returnees, those who glimpsed a reality maybe beyond our own. Perhaps it speaks volumes about the frontiers we are not meant to fully comprehend.